This is Destiny. He's got his problems, but he had a debate with this MAGA nutcase. It was actually really interesting. Let's give it a listen.
Even bringing up Gore v. Bush as a joke, because despite the unpopularity of that Supreme Court case, they accepted the results of the election, just like how Hillary conceded the very night of the election to Donald Trump, as opposed to Donald Trump, who tried to win, who tried to claim victory the night of before the votes had even been counted. It's not even close to the same thing. On every single factual level, you're completely delusional and off on the opposite on the end here.
I'll pose a counter vision of what happened on January 6th. So in 2020, the
Destiny didn't offer a vision or a perspective. He offered facts. I don't know that anybody wants your vision or whatever of the situation.
Government mandated that everybody stay in their homes and not leave and do all the things that I can't talk about the shot ever again. But
are you shitting me? Right? Can't talk about the shot ever again, please.
And simultaneously, were turning on their television and watching BLM rioters burn the cities down every single day.
That didn't happen. BLM protesters were not burning cities down. You know who burned Police Precinct 3 or whatever it was? That was the famous thing. Like the Minneapolis riots when George Floyd was killed led to the police precinct that Derek Chauvin was a part of. It led to that being burned down. Do you know who lit that fire? A Trump supporter. It was a member of a Trump extremist group called the Boogaloo Boys. They were trying to start a race war, exactly as laid out in the Turner Diaries. They were trying to start a race war too in the Turner Diaries. I mean, does it get any more obvious than this? Anyway, the point is that there were certainly some like violent protests. There were absolutely violent protests with like George Floyd and everything, without a doubt. But was that the exception or the rule? It was the exception. By and large, that didn't happen, first of all. Second, why are we talking about these exceptions when what happened was objectively, or let me rephrase, when what happens regularly, black people being persecuted by the police, is objectively more harmful than any of the shit that happened back then in any of those cities. And third, there were no cities burned down. It was one building that was burned down by a Trump supporter. People claimed New York City was burned down. I was there. I was in New York City. It wasn't burned down. There was no bad nothing there. Everything was perfectly fine. Everybody was safe. There were some protests. I wasn't in New York when, like the day that George Floyd happened, but I was there around that time. And none of that shit like negatively affected anything. Everybody was perfectly fine. This whole thing about George Floyd protests burning down cities is just fictitious trash. It's just made up.
That was going on the entire year of 2020. That's all.
It really wasn't. Protests, yes. Riots, burning down cities, like he said, no.
All people saw. They're like, they're burning down the cities, burning down the cities, burning down the cities, burning down.
That did not happen. There was no burning down the cities. Again, Minneapolis had a major building burned down, and that was bad. But again, started by a Proud Boy.
The cities. And so in an election where they literally changed the fucking rules for the election, because, everybody's like,
to be fair, there were fires in Minneapolis. There were fires. Oh my God, I forgot about this video. I was looking for something else. Watch this. It's so stupid.
Look at this. You hit my car? You call yourself an American?
Yes, I'm American. All lives matter.
That's right, but they won't matter until we're... Don't you dare!
He has pulled out a bow and he is aiming it at the crowd. Literally, like something that could kill him. He's aiming a weapon at the crowd, is what he's doing, and yelling, "All lives matter."
This is his car! This is his car!
Anyway, wow. For some reason, it's freezing. It's weird. So anyway, I think they flipped his car. Yeah, this is footage of Police Precinct 3, I think it was.
And allowed with the issue or the edict of Antichrist trying to come and shut Minnesota down.
lit by a Trump supporter.
It was a disgrace to that state. I'm from there. Just like Mike, I'm from there. I grew up in this territory. And when they're beginning to allow these things to happen, it was disgusting, disgraceful. And I think it was Babylon Bee that put out something really funny. You know, Tim Walz, He'll Make America, Minnesota. And when you look at the...
Anyway, the point is that there was a lot of ugly, violent shit that happened at the time. I will give you that for sure. But cities were not burned down like he's portraying here. It's just nonsense.
So now we got to do the mail-in voting, which, may or may not be more secure, regardless of whether or not the election results were legit. I have no ability to verify or not verify these things. But to act as if it's a bizarre conclusion to come to in a completely changed, environment where we're going to make this less secure. We're doing this. It's because of this. And then people go to sleep the night of the election and Trump's up by a mile. Then the next morning they're all,
There's another propaganda framing here that Trump supporters have been leaning into. It came as no surprise to literally anybody, including Donald Trump, that the night of the election, Donald Trump was up in certain areas and down in other areas. Everybody expected that. It was called the Red Mirage. They had been talking about it for months. Everybody knew the Red Mirage was coming because mail-in votes lean blue. They skew blue, and in-person votes lean red. In-person votes are counted before mail-in votes in these states, mostly because Republicans tried to make it that way. Arizona was the only state in which mail-in votes were allowed to be counted when they were received. And as a result, Trump lost Arizona clear as day, immediately. The moment that, votes started coming in, they reported the mail-in votes and they counted Arizona as a Biden win correctly in 2020. The Red Mirage. Everybody expected it. Everybody knew what it was and how it was going to play out and everything else, and there was no surprise there. And he's pretending everybody expected Trump to win. No, they didn't. The night of the election, nobody expected that. Everybody expected Biden to win, actually, by the time we went to bed. Your dumbass didn't understand what you were seeing and were lied to by Donald Trump about, the Red Mirage to lean into it as his advisors instructed him and ran with this propaganda method afterward.
Hey guys, now we counted all the mail-in voting and look at this, dude. Now Trump's losing. Whether or not it's legit or not legit, to act as if it's a bizarre conclusion for them to have. So then,
can I understand then? So you think that all the state election committees were rigged? All the state courts.
That's not what
rigged.
I said.
Wait.
Yeah, that is a necessary conclusion based on what you said. And this is one of the checks on power that we have in the United States. Elections, our election systems are protected by the fact that the states run the elections. The federal government does not run the elections, which puts us in a really good position. Because if the federal government could affect elections, we may never have another Democratic president. Trump would just twist everything around and rig it in favor of whatever. As it stands, each individual state operates in favor of Donald Trump in large part, certainly the Republican-led states, because the Republican Party is a cohesive body, even if the federal government and the states aren't cohesive bodies. Anyway, that's a check on power. Trump only has so much control over what happens with the election systems in the United States.
I literally said I have no idea.
Hold on. When you say you have no idea, that's what you're saying. Because you don't trust the states. You don't trust the state governors, okay? You don't trust their... Hold on. Stop pivoting. I'm just asking you very clearly and very concisely. You think that every single state involved, we'll say at least the 7 swing states or whatever, all of these states lied, all of their courts lied, all of the federal courts that had to review them lied, and then the DOJ and the FBI, who are all, by the way, under Trump, all of these people lied as well. Every single person.
Is that what I said?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're implying by stating what you stated, yes. He's pretending that the election system is one big cohesive system. It's not. You necessarily must believe that all of these states, all of these investigative committees, all of these judges, all of it, all the way up the chain, everywhere, lied. Not made a mistake, but outright fabricated information and lied, necessarily, for you to believe what you're saying.
How can you not trust the outcome if you don't think that all these people lied? Because every single state and all of their state courts and then federal courts all reviewed a lot of this material.
I very clearly said that I have no ability to personally verify whether or not the votes are legit or not. What I'm
he's playing the I'm a moron game again. Yeah, he likes to play this game, I've noticed, when he gets cornered into a conclusion or a position that isn't really advantageous to him. He pretends to be a complete fucking moron who barely knows the English language, never read a book in his life, and he's just the stupidest motherfucker on planet Earth. That's what he pretends to be until it's advantageous to him, until the argument or until the debate flips in his favor, or it hits a topic that he knows a lot about or whatever, or till it hits a topic that he knows he can win on. Until then, he's just the dumbest motherfucker alive.
talking about is the people marching on the Capitol, and then ultimately there being violence at the Capitol.
Hold on. Do you think that the results of do you think
you ever see the movies like where they put people into a movie theater and then they put the glasses on and they feed them like?
Is he talking about A Clockwork Orange? I think he is.
They feed them like the images that's going to make them interpret the world the way it is.
Yeah,
it's like
called Fox
if you
News.
put people in their home.
Fox News. Hey, he's absolutely 100% correct on that. Absolutely, yes.
If you put people in their home and show them nothing but people being angry and rioting.
He's describing Fox News in all seriousness. Really.
Downtown, this city, that city. And then they feel as though the election was stolen. And then now they march to the Capitol. And then you have a handful of people that help with a little bit of incitement. And then they're going to explode. That's not Trump that did that.
Trump was literally inciting them the entire time. He called the people there. He did. Why did he call them there to protest? What are they protesting on January 6th?
Why does anybody protest anything?
No, hold on. Wait, does everybody protest randomly? What were they protesting on January 6th?
They were protesting that they were going to certify the election results where
Correct.
they.
And what was their goal? To stop the steal. What does that mean?
What they're protesting.
He's trapped, and he knows he's trapped. That's why he's got the silence here.
What they're protesting is the interpretation from them. I'm not there. I wasn't at January 6th, but they're interpreting it as this has not been convincing that this was actually investigated and that he did not have the election stolen.
Correct.
So
you're right. So they didn't believe the results of the election. So they went to protest on January 6th to change the results of the election.
Not to change the results of the election. They're protesting.
No, that is exactly what was happening.
The
certification of the vote.
Dude, people protest.
That's an insurrection.
It's not.
It is. You're saying they don't agree with the results of the election because they think it was rigged, and they're going to go and protest it to quote unquote stop the steal.
Right. And so
that was the name of the rally, the Stop the Steal rally.
Saying that this was a coordinated plan.
No one said anything about. Well, it was coordinated because Donald Trump. They didn't go on January 5th, right? They didn't go on January 7th, right?
Again, this was very, very coordinated. Enrique Tarrio worked with Roger Stone and the other Proud Boys and the Trump campaign through Roger Stone to coordinate this attack on the U.S. Capitol. It was coordinated. He wrote memos that were brought up in court and everything. It was a coordinated attack on the U.S. government, an insurrection attempt.
Right, they went there on January 6th to protest what you said.
People to protest, not to violently insurrect the government with no guns.
Well, he knew
they had guns. What are you talking about? They buried guns in caches around the city, and if that doesn't grab you, they all had guns on them too. What are you talking about? There were no guns. Where did you get that?
They had guns when he sent them to the Capitol because the vast majority of the people that showed up at the Ellipse were outside of the secured area. The Secret Service told him there were people there with guns. That's one of the reasons why he wasn't allowed to go to the Capitol afterwards, even though he wanted to. And then he sent them to the Capitol to go and protest. What were they protesting? The certification of the vote. And what happens when they went there? They managed to delay the certification of the vote. What did Donald Trump do? He was calling senators saying, hey, maybe we should wait a little while longer to certify the vote. Everything plays into this one narrative of trying to stop the certification of the vote, stop the steal. It's what it was. It's so obvious. Every single part plays into this.
It's such a crazy interpretation.
Literally everything from the beginning. Hey guys, we're going to stop the steal. Everybody shows up on the Ellipse at January 6th. Hey guys, just so you know, the election was stolen. You need to fight like hell or you're going to lose your country. This election was illegitimate. We need to hashtag stop the steal. People march to the Capitol, they protest and they riot, and they have to stop the certification of the vote, which was the steal. And you're and then Donald Trump is sitting in his office for 187 minutes for 3 hours, not calling the National Guard or doing anything, watching them stop the steal.
And we know that he was watching them, supposedly stop the steal because he was live tweeting it while things happened. And he found out, this happened and that happened, and he would comment on it. He was absolutely, fully aware of what was going on.
And you're like, bro, how could you possibly have this interpretation of events? What?
Because you're making one gigantic leap that's not even defensible in
Okay, what's the leap?
any kind of reasonable way.
What's the leap?
The
You're
leap.
saying, like, all the way up to, yes, they are there to protest. They are there because of this. Then you leap to Donald Trump organized them with the intention of them rioting. That's just not accurate. And then there's not even like a line of dialogue that you could say that would even moderately hold up. The January 6th committee, literally, they went through every single thing. They tried everything they could to nail him to the wall, and even they couldn't come up with anything.
Like, no, they nailed him to the wall. They absolutely nailed him to the wall. The January 6th committee did. Did they charge him? Did they? I don't remember if they charged him, but that's completely irrelevant. It means nothing to me. It doesn't matter in any way. What matters is that we have the information. We know what he said. We know what he did. We know the people he talked to. We know the people that he worked with. We understand all of this stuff, clear as day.
Thing realistic about him inciting violence.
You can literally go through all of Trump's tweets before the day of. On January 5th, he tweets, "I hope the Democrats, and even more importantly, the weak and ineffective rhino section of the Republican Party, are looking at the thousands of people pouring into D.C. They won't stand for a landslide election victory to be stolen." What does that mean?
Right. He's saying that there's a lot of support for more investigation into whether or not
There is no more investigation. That was the last day for anything to happen at all. That's the thing. There were a few deadlines. There was December 14th. That was the deadline that all the states needed to have their elections certified. And then there was January 6th. That was the day that Congress is going to count the votes sent in by the states and certify on a federal level. Those were the two deadlines. And he pressured the states individually not to certify. And when they did anyway, he organized fake electors to go there on January 6th and send in fake documents to the National Archives and everything illegally. And then, and when that failed, January 6th, he organized a riot, and not just a riot, but like an insurrection, full-blown insurrection, to try to delay the vote, because if he could delay it for long enough, I don't remember what the chain of events was, then he was going to be able to have Congress count instead, or Congress make the decision based on the number of members of Congress there were. And there were more members of Congress that were Republicans, so he would have been able to basically have them choose him or whatever it was. And it just didn't work out because Mike Pence didn't allow that to happen. He continued on to count. If he had stopped counting, it would have been up to Congress to make the decision. Mike Pence did his duty as an American, and he did the right thing, and he counted. He finished counting. So anyway, that was the whole bit. That was the goal. That's how it all played out.
actually lost the election.
On January 6th, the rioters are there to investigate?
He didn't say rioters. The protesters are there because they're unhappy that the election's being certified when they feel that the election was stolen.
Correct. They're there to stop the certification of the election.
People coming into D.C., this is a representation of a very large percentage of the population who agree with them. You guys should pay attention because, but like none of that.
Because you know what? You're going to finish your sentence there?
January 4th, Donald Trump tweets out, "How can you certify an election when the numbers being certified are verifiably wrong? You will see the real numbers tonight during my speech, but especially on January 6th. Hashtag March for Trump. Hashtag Stop the Steal. Hashtag Do Not Certify."
What about that sounds like, hey guys, let's go incite violence and raid the Capitol?
How can you stop the certification of the vote? How did they stop the certification? They did it by rioting and breaking into the Capitol, right?
Right, but so your contention is that because Trump said stop the certification, that means that he's like dog whistling to the group to go and invoke.
Yeah, there was no dog whistling happening. He was just straight up saying it. He was telling people to do things.
The Capitol? It's a ludicrous conclusion.
That's exactly what they did. They literally did this, and he literally sat by and watched it.
But you're
He didn't sit by and watch it. He live tweeted it,
saying that he told them to do it or incited it directly.
Yeah, that's what he wants. Yes, of course. He literally wants it to happen. If he didn't want it to happen, why is it that as soon as Trump saw this happening, why wouldn't he have made a call for people to go home? Or why wouldn't he have deployed the National Guard?
He did.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't until after everything was already done and they had clearly lost 3 hours later. Up until that moment, he had been instructing the leaders to do things like find Mike Pence.
It took him 3 hours.
I don't know the exact timeline.
I
know
do. It was
he tweeted
187
out, "Guys,
minutes.
you need to go home peacefully."
Yeah, yes. After 3 hours of his entire family and everybody else in the Republican establishment and the Fox and the right-wing media establishment begging him, please, and his son even sending him, please send these people home.
Nonetheless, the argument that he incited them and told them to go and
It wasn't an incitement. It was a direct plan. It's not like he got people so whipped into a blood frenzy that this happened. He directly planned with insurrectionists exactly what was going to happen ahead of time.
anyway, verbally or non-verbally, is just not there.
January
They would've
2nd, he
charged him.
tweets out, an attempt to steal a landslide election win. Can't let it happen. How do you stop them from stealing?
How is that telling people to go violently raid the Capitol?
On January 1st, retweeting, the cavalry is coming, Mr. President. Hashtag March for Trump. Hashtag Stop the Steal. The slogan is be there, will be wild, January 6th. What are they doing?
He's promoting a protest.
For the certification of the vote.
Right.
January 1st,
we
the big
agree on
protest rally in Washington, D.C. will take place at 11 a.m. on January 6th. Location details to follow. Stop the steal. How are they going to stop this? How do you stop the certification of the vote? How do you do that? You think just protesting outside, they're just going to stop certifying it?
Okay, like, do you think that, well, I guess in this case, bad example, but I would have said, do you think that just because people are upset about, some incidents with police, that if they say defund the police, that they were actually expecting for the cities to...
He says bad example. Yeah, it is a bad example because it's complete nonsense. What does that have to do with anything at all? What are you even talking about? Also, nobody, literally not one single human being wanted to get rid of law enforcement completely. That was never the hope, the expectation, or whatever. Defund the police meant shift funding from the representation of force, a badge and a gun, shift authority from that to social workers when you're dealing with situations that require social workers instead. When you're dealing with a sexual assault case of a child, like a kid is being taken advantage of by their stepdad or something, you don't need a representation of force to come in and do something about that. You need a social worker to come in and do something about that. And hell, you know what? Maybe a representation of force can be there to back up the social worker, but we should be defunding police and funding social workers. That's what that whole thing was all about. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? Oh, hang on. Everyone on our side thinks Elon effed with the election, but you don't see us storming the Capitol, right? That's true. Yeah, absolutely. I know how the election system works, so for that reason, after the months of studying how this system works, I hesitate to say that it's even possible for him to have messed with the election system. But there are some really weird coincidences. I think more likely than he tampered with the election system, I think it's more likely that he influenced or interfered with the election in different ways, like buying Twitter and like directing everything toward things that are positive about Trump and negative about Kamala Harris. I think that's the most likely scenario, rather than he logged into his computer and like tampered with the voting directly. I think that's way less likely. But anyway, yeah, no rioting taking place here. Oop.
Defund the police. I'm saying, like, people protest things they're unhappy about.
Wait, hold on. Yes, there were people that protested to defund the police, and they want them to defund the police. Yeah, it was stupid, but yeah, there were people that...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was stupid. I think that everybody would agree, including Destiny, that it's just if you understood what the hope was for, what the goal was, I think everybody would agree that it's a fine goal. It's just misunderstanding the expectations and the hopes is the issue, that, in my opinion.
You think that people that wanted them to protest to
like, maybe I'm just unfamiliar with the defund the police thing, but that's been my read of it. So
defund the police, yeah, it was stupid, but yeah, there were people that... You think that people that wanted them to protest to defund the police, you don't think those people actually wanted the police defunded?
No, what I'm saying is you're attributing a methodology and an action plan for stop the steal or stop the certification, which includes violence, it's not there. It's just not there.
But it literally is. Donald
it's
Trump
not.
had fake elector slates made. He was trying to pressure Pence to accept these fake electors from these states, and violence was part of the way to pressure people in Congress to not certify the vote or to pressure Pence to...
Do you think, this is a little bit off topic, do you think that Donald Trump, like in your opinion, I'm not talking about the actual vote counting, any of that, do you think that Donald Trump really believed that the election was stolen?
Absolutely
or that
not. He was lying
so
the
you
whole
think
time.
the whole thing he's lying?
Oh, he was absolutely lying. Yeah, and we have proof of that effectively. Proof enough for me to be comfortable calling it proof. Let me find it. Where is it? Yeah, here we go. This is what I was looking for. This is from late October 2024 when Rogan interviewed Trump.
Right.
They say that made, I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't have to. I lost by like,
I'm sorry, what was that? Say that again?
I lost by like, I didn't lose, but
It sounded like you said you lost.
they say I lost, Joe.
And Joe is laughing because he realizes how absolutely absurd it was for him to have just said that based on all of his other actions.
Right.
They say that made, I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't have to. I lost by like, I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe. They say I lost by 22,000 votes.
So the point is, Trump knows. He knows. He's completely full of shit. He was always full of shit and set out to destroy democracy because he wanted to, not because he had a genuinely held belief that he really did win or whatever. Even if he did have that belief, it wouldn't have justified literal insurrection attempts. But I don't even think that he believed it. Not for a second. And I have a billion other examples of Trump saying shit like that. Effectively proving satisfactorily to me that he knew what he was doing.
Absolutely. Obviously. So
Yeah,
obvious.
I completely disagree.
Of course you do. But every single person around him that's credible, the entirety of all of his White House legal counsel, vice president's legal counsel, his Department of Justice, everybody was telling him, these are bullshit claims. None of this is real. We cannot find evidence of any of these things. And Donald Trump went outside the White House to find a cackle pot of crazy lawyers.
Cackle pot. Okay.
Like Powell and Giuliani and Eastman to feed him these crazy conspiracies to try to make
Giuliani's
him...
a cacklepot lawyer as of when,
Yes, absolutely.
though, prior to that.
Everything that I've seen, he might have been in New York. I don't know. I haven't gone over his cases for that. But watching Giuliani's conduct during this stuff, yeah, he was an insane, crazy person, of course.
See, this is what I was talking about. If our base assumptions about what a person's motivations are in opposite ends, that's what I'm saying. It's pointless to even discuss the facts because, like,
No, it's not about. No,
believe-
you don't have any of the facts. That's the issue. You have a feeling that you've come that this can't possibly be true. I've gone through all of these facts. We can go through
the main
Giuliani's
one-
behavior in any of these cases. We can go through any of the facts he's presenting, but you don't want it. You don't have any of those in your head. You just have an impression that Trump has given you, and because Trump has given you this impression, you're like, well, it can't possibly be the case that these guys are crazy.
We are trying to drill into a single fact that you are attributing as truth. And that is that Trump incited violence. And you've gone through all of these things. And as a fact, he 100% did not incite violence. And we've seen that over the last 10 minutes. There's nothing there.
Donald Trump wanted to stop the certification of the vote. Do you agree with
Agree.
that? Okay. He invited tens of thousands of people to the Capitol on the 6th.
I bet he wished it was a million.
Sure,
Yeah.
on the 6th. Do we agree with that?
Sure.
He said statements like, you need to fight like hell or you're going to lose your country. Do we agree with
Like
that?
every single politician has said during.
No, not like every single politician. This is an exception proves the rule type of deal. This is not how it works, but okay.
A campaign
That's
in
fine.
the
That's
history of the
great. That's
country.
great. Do you agree with that? That he said that?
Yeah.
Okay. You agree that he watched the Capitol being broken into and he sat in his room drinking Diet Coke and did nothing about it. Do you agree with that?
I have no idea what he was doing. I know that he tweeted out that they need to peacefully leave.
Yeah, like 3 hours later, he was live tweeting it the entire time. Hours later, when it was obvious that they had lost, then he said they need to go home.
Okay, so you've conveniently, the only part you don't know is the timeline where he sits for 3 hours in his room doing nothing to stop the violence. You're only aware of the final tweet that he made at the end of the day. It was 4:17 p.m. is when he finally told people to go home.
I don't know what time the riot happened. I don't know any of that. All I know is
Don't you
that
think
Trump
that's important?
Never, he never
let's say
incited
this.
violence.
What if it was 3 hours? What if he did sit in a room watching TV for 3 hours and didn't do anything while he watched the Capitol being broken into? Would that be evidence of the intent of him wanting violence there if he didn't do anything to stop it?
No.
Okay, what would you need to see to think that he wanted violence to be there? Besides a direct confession, or is that literally the only thing that would satisfy you? What would you need to see to think that, like,
that even could be moderately interpreted as him trying to incite violence is not there?
Okay, what?
It very obviously is. And again, I don't really care about him inciting violence. I care about the fact that he helped, or that he knew that an insurrection was being planned. An insurrection. He knew an insurrection was being planned and was planning it with them through, like, cutouts, through Roger Stone and stuff, and encouraged it, moved it forward, worked with those people, and live tweeted instructions to them through the entire thing. That's what I care about.
What about Giuliani? What about at the ellipse beforehand? Well, first, we're way past that. But at the ellipse beforehand, Rudy Giuliani literally says, let's have trial by combat. The election was stolen. We're going to fight to the very end to make sure this doesn't happen. Right before Trump comes on.
Trial by I don't, what the fuck does that even mean? Trial by combat is generally talking about one guy versus one guy, and they fight to the death in, like, Game of Thrones. I have no idea what the fuck that even means.
Really? You're trying to tell me that you're taking the old route of you're just dumb as dog shit and you've never heard of any cultural references in your entire life, that you've literally never read a book ever, that the last book that you read was The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and you're just completely in the dark about literally everything, but you chose to take a debate on this subject anyway, is what you're saying? No, he's completely full of shit, and it's clear as day. Everybody can tell that this dude is completely full of shit.
So unless Donald Trump says, I want you to go to the Capitol and violently break into the building, then nothing else counts as...
I mean, he doesn't need to necessarily say it like that, but he has to say something that could be interpreted reasonably that his intention was for them to be violent. There is no upside in him getting, like,
quote, we have overwhelming pride in this great country, and we have it deep in our souls. Together, we are determined to defend and preserve the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But I said something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can have happened, and we fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give, the Democrats are hopeless. They never vote for anything, not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and loudness they need to take back our country. So let's walk down.
So, wow, that's pretty dead to rights, honestly. It does not get any clearer than that right there. He very obviously told people to go to the Capitol to force Republicans to do what he wanted them to do, which is to say, refuse to cooperate with the peaceful transition of power. Steal the election is what that means.
Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's, like, actually crystal clear that what his intention was for them to march down there and be loud. Not. And he's saying, give the Republicans that actually is the exact opposite of inciting violence, because that does state his intention. And that was for them to march down to the Capitol and let their voices be heard, not break in and go fucking, zip tie people or whatever this ridiculous narrative was. Now, you said that they knew.
Ridiculous narrative. I find it interesting he picked zip tie because there was a guy there with zip tie handcuffs. Why did you say zip tie specifically?
They had guns. How, like, what number are we talking? Are we talking like 2 people that had a concealed carry permit? Because you definitely...
No, there were like lots and lots of guns at the Capitol on that day. Again, buried in caches around DC specifically is one of the more disturbing parts of it. And like tons and tons of people were denied entry to the Capitol speech that he gave beforehand. They were denied entry because they refused to go through the magnetometers. Like tens of thousands. Anyway, yeah, it looks like that's the end of it. Yeah, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I'm like honestly so entertained by this shit. It's just ridiculous.